Hi everybody, welcome. Just finished up a video on how to change the lower leg oil, the gear oil in the lower leg of my Johnson 99 1982. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull out the lower leg and do the water pump. Like I said before, I've owned this motor for just over a year. The fellow that owned it before me said he had done the pump the year prior. So it's been 2 or 3 years. Not a bad idea to do this as preventative maintenance. The water pump rebuild kit from OMC. Part number 394711. Cost me 50 bucks Canadian. Although you can find it online for a tad cheaper. I think 38 bucks US. But by the time you ship it and everything, pretty much worth it to just buy it here. So it comes with everything. It comes with the impeller itself. It also comes with the water pump housing, the new bolts, lower plate, as well as the O-rings and grommets that are necessary. And it also comes with a new key for the impeller as well. So, as I said, my impeller has not failed on this motor yet, but I'm hoping to do this as preventative maintenance. I run this boat in the Fraser River, which is quite silty and can be pretty hard on these impellers, so I'd rather not find myself stranded without an impeller. Alright, so first things first, I need to loosen off all of these. There are 6 3/8 bolts on the bottom, 3 on each side, so 6 3/8 bolts on the bottom of the leg. And then we'll release the gear shift cable at that point. So bear with me.
Okay guys, so now that I've got the 6 bolts more or less off, got a couple just hanging on right now, you can see the gear shift linkage is connected with a little slotted 3/8 bolt. So you can use your slotted over 3/8 socket if you want. I'm going to go with the socket because I trust myself more with it. Okay, so you can see the main spline that goes up into the power head, the main drive shaft. And you can see at the back there my little shift linkage connector. That's where I remove the slotted 3/8 bolt. And that protruding bent metal linkage is the shifting linkage from the power head. Otherwise, you can just sort of see right up into the leg. And here's our water pump housing. It looks like the previous owner was indeed correct. He used that as an aftermarket pump housing. You can tell because the original OMC Johnson housings actually had different screws, different size screws. To be honest, I don't remember which one, but I think these were slightly higher. It could have been the other way around, I don't remember, but either way. Okay, so we're going to start by removing the 4 bolts on each side of the pump housing and sliding it right up off the slide. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've disconnected the 4 bolts on the water pump housing and just slid it up the spline. You can see the plate with some of the gasket, or it's actually just the plastic bottom of the housing there that's sort of become fused onto it, which is not abnormal, but it does show that it's probably not a bad time to change it. Not a whole lot of corrosion to speak of, which is nice to see. The spine itself is in really good shape. One other note, there is a tiny little O-ring in that little groove at the top of the spline. I'm trying to make it focus, sorry guys. That you'll need to just pop off. That is part of your water pump rebuild kit, so don't really need to be too careful with it unless you're not planning on replacing it. Alright, so we'll slide this pump housing off and have a look. Alright, so I've got the old pump housing all disassembled in front of me. I'm looking up at the
bottom into the pump housing. You can see the old impeller is fine. It's not broken up or anything. I do like to take note of which way the impeller arms are curved, just because when I put the new one in, it doesn't really matter. It will right itself once it starts to spin, but I mean, you might as well put it in the way it's going to be. Minimize the strain on those little rubber arms. So take note of which way it's spinning. If you get confused, the spline on this particular motor, and most outboards as far as I know, does spin clockwise at all times, regardless of which gear it's in, because the gear ratio or the gear directions change below this point in the legs. So it'll always spin clockwise if you get confused, but looking up at it, that's what it looks like. Compared to the new housing here, you can see I haven't put the new impeller in yet. I wanted to show you something really quick. If we flip the housings over, there's a little grommet that sits at this point here, and it is where the water tube fits into the pump housing. It's where the water shoots up into the engine. And you can see here that the old housing had this sort of larger tapered looking grommet. If I put it down there, you can have a look. Now the kit comes with 3. I'll just show you what the kit came with. It came with the one that the other gentleman had on there. It came with a larger one, larger and skinnier one there. And then it came with a third one that I've already popped in to the new housing. And you can see it's quite a lot smaller. It just sits sort of flush with the top. And if you look at the paperwork that came with it, it clearly shows 3 different size grommets, 2, 3, and 4. And if you look at the instructions, it says which grommet is for which motor. This motor is a short shaft, 15-inch shaft, 1982. So you can see here, a 15-inch 9.9 all the way through to 1992 should have grommet number 2, which is the tiny little one. So the other guy had the wrong grommet on there. Not the end of the world, but to get the right fit onto the water tube going up into the motor, you want to have the right grommet. So just take note of which grommet fits your particular motor and go from there. So I'm going to assemble the rest of the pieces of the pump housing here just before I slide it on, so bear with me. Alright, back again. Just wanted to show you guys a quick update. So I've taken my new pump housing here and I've installed the oil seal. This metal ring has it's very hard to see, but it's got a little rubber seal on the inside of it there. It just sits right in. This is the old pump housing, just to show you. It comes separate like that, and make sure you put the opening down, center it nicely, and just use a rubber mallet and really gently and evenly tap it in until it is flush with the top of the plastic housing, like so. The big rubber O-ring that comes with it goes right along the top of the housing, like so. That's already done on the new one. I've got my grommet installed with the two little nubs in their spots there, and I've slid the metal sleeve into the bottom of the housing. It only goes in one way with the opening towards the slot there. And next step will be to put the impeller in the metal sleeve, and it's a little bit tricky just because it is a bit of a tight fit. You've got to bend the arms of the impeller to get it in there. Remember to try to, like I said, just to make it easier, when you're putting in a new impeller, the arms are stiff and unbent, whereas the old impeller, if you were reinstalling the old impeller, it would be a breeze because it sort of stays bent the way it has been for years and years. So to make it easier for yourself, put a really small amount, a really thin layer of grease on the inside of that metal sleeve. Another reason for the grease is when you first fire this motor, after doing this water pump housing job, there won't be any water in the housing until it draws water up, and so it'll be running dry if you don't grease it. And again, it's just hard on the soft rubber. You can wind up ripping a brand new impeller before it even sees any action. So put a really light film of grease in there, not enough that will clog anything, and then that way when it fires up, it won't be dry. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start by putting the plate back down, the new plate. As you can see, I just kind of cleaned up the mating surface there on the lower leg. Just go easy. I mean, I was when I took the old one apart, I was thinking that the black chunks on the plate and the old plate were pieces of rubber gasket that had stuck, but it turns out the new one is actually painted black, so it's just what's left of the paint that was originally on there. I question the design, why they feel the need to paint it black, because obviously the old paint chips off and will eventually come out the other side of the engine or get stuck, so I think that's personally not the best design, but anyway, that's all I have to work with. So go ahead and put the new plate in. I took note of the way the plate came off with the hole, the sort of opening on the, I guess that would be the port side of the motor. I'm not sure if it matters, but that's how the old one came off. If you get confused, there's a little stamp on the bottom, and that's the part number stamp, and that just goes down, so that's another way to remember. So start with the plate down like that, and then we'll go ahead and slide the new housing down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the new pump housing down on the spline. The last sort of interesting part of this before actually getting the leg back up into the power head is fitting the little key for the impeller into the keyway hole in the impeller itself. So I find the only way I know how to do this, and the way I see most people doing it, is you line up the keyway in the impeller there to the 12 o'clock position, because it's going to sit down on the housing like that. And then on the flat spot on your spline, you just put a little bit of grease, and that holds the key where it needs to be. Otherwise, I can't imagine how you would possibly get that in there. So now when you slide your housing down the spline, all right, so thanks to the wonder of editing, there's no way you can do that with one hand. Or at least there's no way I could do that with one hand. So I managed to slide it, slid right down on top, and the key slid right into the keyway. So I'm now flush. I can go ahead and bolt up those 4 bolts, snug them right up, and then I'll go ahead and grease and place the O-ring on the top of my spline. All right, so housing is on. A little bit of grease there. Housing is on, it's all tightened up, it's nice and snug. Don't over tighten, it's just plastic, it will snap. Put the lube on the top of the spline along with the new O-ring. If you have a look at the leg, the lower part of the upper leg, you'll see the water tube there that fits on the grommet. I just make sure it's clean, your contact surfaces are clean. That large O-ring that fits around the housing fits into that large opening there where the spine goes up. There's quite a lot of crud and crap on there, so just make sure you get it nice and clean, and I put just a really super thin coating of grease on it. Make sure your contact surfaces are clean along the bottom. I've got to clean it still. And then go ahead and reinsert the spline up into the upper power head, and just take your time. This I won't be able to film me doing it just because I don't have a tripod, but having 2 people helps a lot. Sometimes just to have one guy sort of hold the upper part of the motor, and depending on how stable your stand is, and then you just sort of working it up. Don't force it, whatever you do. It only goes in, you'll know when it goes in, you'll get a nice positive click, and then the last couple of, I guess sort of half-inch is where you'll want to stop and reconnect the shift lever, or sorry, the shift linkage. and then start. So bear with me, I'll get to that point and then I'll come back. All right, so I managed to get the lower leg back up into the power head pretty easily. The only challenge was getting the shift linkage screw tightened while holding the legs. So you kind of have to, what I found was I got the leg up so that there was about, I don't know, maybe half an inch space between the upper and the lower legs. I started threading one or two of the bolts so that it would hold the the lower leg, and then with both hands I could then tighten up the shift linkage screw. While I found it was easier to take it off with a 3/8 socket, I found that when I was putting it back together there was less of a space, and I couldn't actually fit my socket in between, so I just used a small slotted screw. It was easier. So that was my getting the leg back on. Now I just need to tighten up all 6 of the bolts, and that is it. I'm done. After this I can hook it up to the muffs and make sure my impeller's pumping water. Alright, so we got it all back together. Got the old muffs on in the driveway. Let's see if she fires up and hopefully pees out some water. Well, looks good to me. Thanks everybody.